Welcome ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk about the PTS patch notes, testing ideas for light and heavy attacks in combat. We will talk about my feedback a little bit later because I tested the stuff out on the PTS, but first let's go through the text here. Now keep in mind I will do two videos, one talking about the light and heavy attacks, and then I will do another one talking about actions per minute. I think it was a little bit unfortunate that they put these two things into the same article. Now a lot of people are memeing around and stuff like that. They should have done too, but whatever. I do appreciate that they actually gave us an off-cycle PTS, so we can test these things. So they already can get feedback on it before it actually goes on to a real PTS, if it will. They said this might not even go live. Now we will read through this and also give my opinion about it, because I already tested the stuff. We have been discussing ways to address these issues, and we would like to get your feedback on some changes to both light and heavy attacks on the PTS during a special off-cycle testing period. These changes are focused on light and heavy attack damage and resource restoring capabilities. A summary of the changes are as follows. Before we get in there, one thing I want to point out, what confused me a little bit, wait, where was it? Yeah, so they say here finally the concept of using light attacks for damage and heavy attacks for restore is quite simply unintuitive. Now what they did is, light attacks now restore resources and resources restore is removed from heavy attacks. Before it was the other side around. What I don't understand is, how is this intuitive? It should be either both or none, right? So, successive light attacks grant a stacking resource buff up to 3 consecutive attacks, maxing out the benefit. So when you do 3 light attacks in a row, you will get more benefit out of it. It feels super awkward if I had to do that. What I would like them to see do is, again, either both versions should restore resources or none, right? So you have light attacks that constantly give you small chunks of resources back, or you decide to charge a heavy attack which gives you a bigger chunk back, like it is now. That would be intuitive. Or none of them at all, because why should you get resources back by hitting the enemy with a stick or anything, right? You have absorb and chance for that, you have recovery, you have skills that do these kind of things. Now the next thing, light attack damage is reduced and heavy attack damage is increased. They reduced this by 78 if I recall correctly, yes. I felt like this was too much. The light attacks do a lot of damage. I feel like this should be reduced, but more so maybe by like 30%. 78 is way too much. My bash does more damage than my light attack. Heavy attack damage is increased. Heavy attack, when I was testing the build, the heavy attacks did actually do more damage than my abilities, and I also feel like that's a little bit weird. So maybe they should reduce the heavy attack damage by a little bit, because I feel like the abilities should do more damage. That's why they're abilities. Non-fully charged heavy attacks, also known as medium attacks, now have a scaling amount of damage based on how long you hold the attack. That's another thing. They're trying to simplify the process here for newer players. Medium attacks are super weird and most people don't understand the concept of it. So is it really wise to keep them in the game? Like, do we want them? I don't mind them, but I feel like if they want to make the game easier, they should probably remove these. If not, it's fairly simple to implement, because you can. So when a resource restore, either a light attack, small chunk, medium attack, it gives you a little bit more, or the heavy attack, which gives you a lot of resources back. So you can just simply scale it up. You really want to go that route. That would be another option. All types of attacks now interactive off balance. So I used this heavily when I was testing. Light attacking an off balance target results in even more resource return. Medium attacking an off balance target results in more damage. Heavy attacking an off balance target results in even more damage. And stuns the enemy too. I was testing it on a stamina build, Stamsork, and I used Dizzy Swing. Originally I used Wrecking Blow on the build, but the Empower on the Wrecking Blow morph only gives a little bit more damage, so the off balance is superior in any way. So I chose Dizzy Swing, which applies off balance on the enemies. Therefore my sustain was even better. So I felt like the light attacks restored a little bit too much sustain, especially when off balance was on the target. The other thing is fine, I guess. The heavy attacking an off-balance target should do more damage. We believe these changes will broaden the usage of light, medium, heavy attacks for all players. In this new dynamic, heavy attack builds will be more viable, giving low APM players opportunities to compete in both PvE and PvP. Are they categorizing people now low, medium, high APM? I don't know. High APM play is still rewarded as the absolute highest DPS and requires a mix of both light and heavy attacks, interacting with off balance as optimally as possible. Now, what I don't like about this sentence is high APM play is still rewarded as the absolute highest DPS. APM is not only a DPS issue. APM includes everything: movement, blocking, dodge rolling, using abilities, and all that stuff. It's not only a DPS problem, but they make it look like it's only a thing for DPS. And I can also probably tell you why. That's because SOS, or people that actually can make decisions as SOS for these changes, they only test on target dummies. That's why APM constantly comes up again. And yeah, that's bad. That's why I tested my things in City of Ash, just to actually get the feel of everything: healing, resource management, damage, and all that stuff. That's the only thing that is a little bit wonky. But anyway, we will talk more about this on the actions per minute video. Blah 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 blah. Okay, we realize these are big changes and we are excited to have this off-cycle test where we can provide some very focused feedback. We would like to emphasize the possibility of these changes never actually going into the game. We are simply testing and gathering feedback right now. So yeah. So they highlight this, which is nice. It's just really hard to believe given their track record and PTS. We will see how this turns out. The current PTS build you will be playing on is update 25 code with the addition of the light and heavy attack changes. This will give everyone a clear before and after environment between live and PTS to allow for better comparison. We hope you will jump in to test the changes and provide feedback. We will be prioritizing feedback received in-game through /feedback, but we also have a forum thread set up here with some targeted questions. Okay. So if you tested these changes on the PTS, make sure to give them feedback. And by feedback, I mean it should be somehow structured, not just complaining. Quickly taking a look at this. They scale off the highest stat. Yes, all weapon-based light attacks will restore 200 stamina or magic per hit, depending on their type. Again, I feel like that's a little bit too much. Werewolf, I'm not sure. Werewolf got hit quite hard here. I'm not sure how the heavy attacks will be, but heavy attacks on a werewolf feel kinda wonky. But if the light attacks really get that big of a damage reduction, ain't gonna be good for werewolf. So here, using light attacks in quick succession increases the resource return by its base value up to a maximum of 3 times. This means normal weapons, light attacks restore up to 1000. Wait, this means... Using that in quick increases the... But shouldn't that 3 times more is 600, not okay. Whatever, it doesn't matter. That's the one thing, like... I had a situation on the PTS when I was testing. I was out of stamina and I couldn't do a heavy attack. I just had to spam light attack 3, 4, 5 times and it felt super awkward. Heavy attacks no longer restore the resources, decreased. Yeah, yada. Oh, yeah, there's another thing. Let's see. Dual wield heavy attacks now deal approximately 31% damage. So overall, the heavy attacks hit super hard now. I feel like that's gonna be a problem in PvP. Another thing, bow heavy attacks now deal more damage and reduce their casting times by 550 milliseconds. So they reduced a lot of the cast times, certain things. The heavy attacks are faster now. Now another thing, let me see. They removed the snare you get when you're charging a heavy attack. Where? Yeah, here. Your movement speed is no longer reduced while channeling. So this is actually huge for PvE and PvP too. It will help players in PvE not standing stupid, especially if they choose to run heavy attack builds. Because previously, when you were doing heavy attack builds, you got snared, so you moved slower. Therefore, you might not be able to run out of like a fire AoE or something. A good player will, a bad player will not. And this will actually help a lot with that issue, so people that might have previously died might not now. On the other hand, in PvP, I can see experienced players use this way better than new players. Like, it will give experienced players an even bigger edge. Because movement is very important. Yeah, there's a lot of other things that they increase the damage on. Easy peasy. Yeah, faster heavy attacks, no more snare. That's huge. A lot of people are like up on the resource restore and shit like that, but I actually think them removing the snare on the heavy attacks is bigger than the other changes. And also the reduction of the cast time of these things. Like, these are huge buffs. Way more heavy attack damage than they buff the specific types too. And they reduce the snare. Or like remove it completely. That's big boy buff. Light attacking of balanced enemies adds 5 stacks to your restore, bypassing the natural. Oh, okay, so 1 is base and then it can go 3 times. I see, okay, yeah. Man wounds has been intentionally untouched for the time being. Okay, yeah. Another big problem with this, it's not a problem, but it's just something they need to remember, is there will be a lot of sets that have to get adjusted. Otherwise, it might be a mess. They already adjusted some things, but whatever, not that relevant. Some abilities already got adjusted, like Molten Armament. This ability now increases the damage of your fully charged heavy attack by up to 3000, rather than increasing the damage of all heavy attacks by 50%. I mean, this would be... I remember my bullseye build. You could one-shot people in Cyrodiil. And heavy attacks will be a lot more common. Like, they're gonna do so much damage, it's gonna be nuts. But again, they probably will adjust the numbers a little bit further. It's not final. So that's this. They adjusted a few other things. Now let's quickly see. So I tested these changes by soloing City of Ash Vet 2 with hard mode. The reason why I did this was, like 2 weeks ago, I actually created builds on my website and I tested them by soloing Veteran City of Ash 2 with hard mode. So I felt like it was the best comparison I could do. The reason why that is, I will put the VOD link into the description so you can check it out if you want. The reason why I felt like this test was good is, because I'm alone, I have to block a lot, I have to heal, I have to dodge roll a lot, especially on the last boss because of all the stuns. My movement matters a lot, resource management and all that stuff, right? Whereas when you test on a target dummy, which most people do, only DPS matters. And that's my biggest problem too. I think Sauce also only tested the stuff on a target dummy. At least the people that make decisions on changes. But I'm not sure, I could be wrong. That's why I say on a target dummies, the testing methods could be like, the results could be different. I know that a lot of people did target dummy tests, and the damage overall was a little bit lower. However, the APM is bigger because the light attacks restore so much resources. You actually can bash weave now. And bash weaving adds a little bit of extra damage, maybe 4 or 5k. So it's kind of like mandatory in endgame. And that would even increase the APM more and probably widen the gap. But I'm sure they will look at bash damage overall. So again, what did I feel like was different? Sustain overall was better, most likely because I had Dizzy Swing, which applied off balance on the enemy to get more resource return from light attacks, and my heavy attacks do more damage. Damage overall was a bit lower because the light attacks hit like a wet noodle. Not restoring resources via heavy attack felt weird because I'm just used to it so much. Like when I drop low on resources or when I'm trying to get close to an enemy, either I use an ability or I charge a heavy attack to restore resources. And now this didn't work anymore, so it kind of felt like, well, okay, what should I do? I will still do the heavy attack, but it just does damage, and I'm expecting resource return. That's just old habit. Now, when I'm out of stamina, I had to light attack like 3 to 5 times in a row. This felt super awkward and not at all rewarding. I want to use my abilities. And with a heavy attack, because you restored so much resources, if you really needed it, you could immediately use an ability afterwards again. Whereas with a light attack, because it's just small chunks, I actually had to just light attack and it felt super weird, because I want to use my abilities. Now we already mentioned this before. They said the concept of using light attacks for damage and heavy attacks for restore is quite simply unintuitive. So I'm asking like, how is the opposite intuitive? To make it intuitive, either both have to restore resources, maybe via scaling, because the heavy attacks should restore more than light attacks, or none, because why would you get back resources from hitting an enemy with a stick? Like, again, recovery, glyphs on jewelry, or cost reduction, you have abilities that all this, absorb enchantments, there's a lot of other ways to increase your resource return, like synergies from orbs and stuff like that. It would be another option to completely remove it. That's probably actually the most intuitive way for a new player, if you think about it. Heavy attack does more damage because you charge it and it should hit hard, and light attacks do a little bit of damage. Now, yeah, that's what I said before. Once again, light attacks hit like a wet noodle. I think 30% reduction would be more than enough. The resource restore felt too big from light attacks in my opinion. Endgame players will use this extra resources to just bash weave, and the APM will actually increase. The heavy attacks on the two-handed did more damage than my actual abilities. I think that should not be the case. Now about the endgame stuff. Heavy attack builds will do more damage if this change goes through. So overall, people that choose to do heavy attack builds that don't like to click so much abilities, they will do more damage than before, therefore like reducing the gap between like a top tier player dealing damage and a low APM player, or whatever you want to call it. So what would I like to see from this? Again, I don't mind the change, it's fine, it makes more sense anyway. However, tune down the light attack resource restore, but also add it back to the heavy attack, so both of them have it, and not just one. So you can decide whether you just want small chunks of extra resources from constant light attacks or a big resource return via heavy attack. Now, the biggest takeaway from this is people that are on the forums testing stuff, they will notice this, but how is Sauce gonna notify players that just started? Or just like people that don't keep up with patch notes and stuff. Because that's always a big problem. People that take a break from the game and they come back after like, let's say 6 months. They're like, what the hell is going on here? Nothing works like it used to. And not everybody might have the energy to go to the patch notes, because they're like, okay, fuck it, I'm done, I'm gone, because it doesn't feel great anymore. So I feel like Sauce needs to get a little bit better in that area. And it's not only about light and heavy attacks, it's the same thing with like, I will get into that more with the actions per minute video. Buff food, potions. Many people don't know these things are like OP as fuck. They're just very good. And other people don't use them or don't use the right food. So they need better tutorials or they need more resources to actually teach players to learn these basic game mechanics. Because in the game, nothing tells you that the heavy attack currently restores resources. Either you know it or you don't. Same with the light attack, right? And when they turn it around or make it that it's both, like, how are people gonna know? Not everybody goes to the forum. Only a small portion of the player base goes to the forum. So I feel like they need to get better in that department. Because just changing the things in-game, but not notifying the people, it's tricky. It's the easy road. But anyway, I talked long enough. The APM video will come. It will be a little bit more complicated because it's a way bigger topic overall. If you want, you can let me know your opinion in the comments section below. Overall, I'm not against the idea. It just has to be executed a little bit differently than they have it here. Especially because it seems that the intuitiveness is like a big part of their thing. And at the moment, their solution doesn't really provide that. So I hope they will adjust these things. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe, hit the juicy like button. Thanks for watching and see ya soon. Cheers.